The storm broke before dawn, tearing through the valley with a rage that felt almost personal. Lightning clawed across the dark, and the thunder followed like a curse. Somewhere between those echoes, a man lost the last pieces of his world. The river had risen too fast that night, swallowing the small cabin, the corral, the quiet laughter that once made the place a home. When the morning came, there was only silence, and the slow realization that the cowboy named Elias Harlow had nothing left to lose. He spent the following months drifting across the plains like a ghost in borrowed skin. He took work where he could, never long enough to be known, never close enough to be missed. The people who saw him said he moved like someone listening for a voice that never answered. His horse, a dark brown gelding with a scarred flank, carried him, without question, as if it too had forgotten what direction meant. One evening, as the sun began to drown in a copper sky, Elias found himself in a stretch of country that looked untouched by kindness. The wheat was high and dry, whispering in the wind like 1,000 brittle tongues. The land felt hollow, drained of purpose. He might have kept riding through it if not for the faint glint of fabric caught against the horizon, something pale and unnatural swaying with the wind. At first he thought it a trick of light, maybe an old scarecrow left to rot. But as he drew nearer, the shape took on human edges, a figure bound to a wooden pillar rising from the field, arms spread wide as if crucified to the sky. The air changed around him, turned heavy with dread and disbelief. He dismounted slowly. His boots sank into the earth, soft from last night's rain. The closer he came, the more the image sharpened into horror. A woman, alive, breathing shallowly, her wrists raw from rope and her dress torn by wind and sun. Her hair, long and tangled, clung to her face in strands of chestnut and dust. Her lips were cracked, her skin pale as bone beneath the fading light. Yet her eyes, when they flickered open, held no fear, only defiance. Elias felt something twist inside him. The last time he'd seen eyes that steady, they belonged to his wife, in the seconds before the flood took her. He reached for his knife and cut the ropes, careful not to startle her. She swayed, but did not fall. The air between them felt thick, filled with questions neither dared to voice. "You're safe," he said quietly, though he wasn't sure it was true. Her voice came slow, rasped dry by thirst. Safe's a word men use when they want to believe it. He offered his canteen. She drank as if it hurt, each swallow trembling down her throat. He noticed then the bruises around her wrists, shallow, deliberate. Whoever had left her here wanted her alive just long enough to suffer. Who did this? She turned her gaze toward the horizon. People who think mercy's a weakness. He didn't ask more. He saw enough in her stillness to know she had been betrayed by her own. When she tried to walk, her knees buckled. Elias caught her, feeling how light she was, how fragile yet stubborn. "You need rest." She looked up at him, then, really seeing him. Something in her eyes, pain recognizing pain, made him shift his weight uneasily. He had avoided compassion for so long it felt foreign to receive it, even silently. They reached his horse. He helped her onto the saddle, then climbed up behind her, careful to leave space though the wind pressed them close. Neither spoke as they rode, the plain stretching endlessly before them. The only sound was the rhythmic creak of leather and the sigh of the wheat brushing against their boots. As night deepened, they found shelter near the remnants of an old shack, the roof sagging like tired shoulders. He started a small fire. The woman sat opposite him, legs drawn close, staring into the flames as though they might burn away memory. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. Names don't matter when people decide you're guilty. He studied her quietly. She was around 30, he guessed, young enough to begin again, old enough to know how cruel beginnings could be. "You got somewhere to go?" She shook her head. "Nowhere that would take me back." Elias looked into the fire. "Then we'll ride at first light. Maybe the next town's kinder." Her eyes softened, not quite a smile, but close. "You think kindness grows in towns?" He wanted to tell her no, that it grows only in the hearts of people willing to suffer for it. But the words caught somewhere between thought and breath. The storm clouds had cleared by then, revealing a narrow strip of stars. For the first time in months, he felt the faint ache of something unfamiliar. Hope, or maybe fear of it. She leaned her head back against the wall and closed her eyes. The fire painted her features in amber light, and he noticed how calm she looked, as if peace were not the absence of pain, but the acceptance of it. He should have looked away. Instead, he watched her until sleep tugged at his own edges. Just before his eyes closed, she spoke, voice almost lost to the wind. They tied me to that cross to make me silent. But silence doesn't save them. It only feeds what's already rotten. Elias opened his eyes again, heart tightening. There was something in her tone, neither fear nor bitterness, but warning. And somewhere in the dark, beyond the whispering wheat, a lone cry echoed, a coyote, or perhaps something else. Something that told him this woman's past wasn't done with her yet. The morning came harsh and cold, carrying the sound of hooves and the weight of reckoning. Elias woke to the woman's sharp whisper, "Riders." He was on his feet before thought caught up, heart pounding against ribs that had grown too used to silence. Through the cracks in the cabin's wall, he saw them. 5 men on horseback cutting through the wheat like dark blades, faces painted in crimson dust. Her people. She didn't flinch, only pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "I told you they'd come." He reached for his rifle. "They mean to take you? They mean to finish what they started." Her voice was calm, almost resigned, and something in that steadiness infuriated him, the quiet acceptance of someone who had learned to expect betrayal. He had lived with his own ghosts too long to bear watching another surrender to theirs. When the riders dismounted, the leader, a broad man with eyes sharp as flint, called out her name in their native tongue. She rose slowly and stepped outside before Elias could stop her. The wind caught her dress, making her seem both fragile and unbreakable. He followed, rifle in hand. The leader sneered when he saw the cowboy beside her. "You bring shame twice over," he said, words thick with scorn. "Once for helping the settlers. Again for lying with one." "She didn't lie with me," Elias said, voice low. "She lived because I untied her. That's all." The man spat into the dirt. "Then you can die beside her." Elias felt the weight of the barrel in his palm, the muscle memory of survival urging him to raise it, to end the threat before it bloomed. But the woman stepped forward, placing herself between them. Her gaze held the authority of someone who had lost too much to fear losing again. "If you kill him," she said, "you prove them right, that mercy is wasted on us." The leader laughed, but it was an uneasy sound. The others exchanged uncertain glances. She spoke again, her tone softer now, like wind through tall grass. "I did not betray you. I saved children from drowning when the settlers' wagon fell into the river. I gave water to dying men because the sun does not ask what blood runs in your veins. For this, you tied me to a post and called it justice." Her words spread through the air like slow fire, consuming the silence. Even Elias, standing behind her, felt his chest tighten with something close to awe. One of the younger riders lowered his weapon first. Then another. The leader's expression hardened, pride warring with conscience. Finally, he turned his horse. "You are no longer one of us," he said. "May the wind forget your name." She didn't answer. She simply watched them ride away until the sound of hooves faded into nothing. When she finally turned to Elias, her hands were trembling. "They'll come again," she said. "Hate doesn't vanish, it hides." He lowered his rifle, still watching the horizon. "Then let it hide. You've done enough running." They rode east after that, through fields stripped bare by wind. The silence between them changed. It was no longer the silence of strangers, but of two people who had seen too much to need words. He told her his name, finally, and about the flood, the cabin, the graves, the way the water sounded when it took everything. She didn't offer comfort. She only said, "Sometimes the earth takes what it lent too kindly." They reached the remnants of his ranch by sunset. The fences were broken, the barn roof caved in, but the soil was soft, still capable of life. She knelt and let it crumble through her fingers. "It can grow again," she murmured. He looked at her then, not as someone he'd saved, but as someone who had begun saving him without meaning to. "Maybe we both can." That night, they built a fire near what had been his front porch. She hummed something low, a song without words. Elias listened, eyes half closed, imagining the sound weaving through the empty rooms of the house he'd lost. When her voice faded, she said, almost to herself, I used to believe healing was something you earned. Now I think it's something that happens when someone stays. He wanted to tell her he wasn't good at staying, that the weight of the past had a way of calling him back to his grief. But when he met her gaze, he knew the words would break before leaving his throat. The fire burned low. She reached for a stick, stirring the embers until sparks rose like scattered stars. You think they'll come back for me? He hesitated. Maybe. But they'll have to come through me first. A faint smile touched her lips. You talk like a man who's tired of surviving alone. Maybe I am. The night deepened around them, the wind carrying scents of rain and soil. Somewhere beyond the fields an owl cried, a sound so lonely it seemed to echo their own unspoken fears. She leaned closer to the firelight, her face painted gold and shadow. If they return, she said quietly, I won't run again. I'm done being afraid. He nodded, though a knot of unease coiled in his gut. The peace they'd built here felt fragile, like glass too thin to hold its own reflection. Then, from far off in the dark, came the distant echo of hooves. Slow, deliberate, drawing nearer. Elias rose, his hand instinctively finding the rifle beside him. The woman didn't move, her eyes fixed on the darkness with a calm that unnerved him. They've found me, she whispered. And for the first time, he felt the terrifying truth settle between them. This was not the end of her suffering. It was only the beginning of his choice to share it.